All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Building a Single Page App with Lightning Components session. My name is Rodrigo Rebocas. I'm a Senior ISV Technical Evangelist at Salesforce. And before we start, Salesforce is a publicly traded company, so please make all your purchasing decisions based on current and public available functionality only. So let's go to our agenda. So what is this session all about, right? So today we're going to show you guys a very cool custom Lightning component that our team created here at Salesforce called Send Offer. We built this Lightning component with a very interesting architecture, which is the single page application architecture. And we're going to show you guys what that means, and we're going to cover some alternative approaches to kind of accomplish the same user experience. And time allowing, we open up for Q&A at the end. So what is a single page app? Right, or SPA. You will hear me saying SPA a lot throughout this session, which stands for single page application. So that basically they are web applications that they load a single page and dynamically update that page or parts of that page whenever the user interacts with our app. If you think about it, our Salesforce Lightning experience and Salesforce mobile experiences, they are single page apps themselves. And single page apps, they have three very unique characteristics. So there are no page reloads, entire page reloads. They are client-side centric, so most of the work happens on the client side on the browser. And they have a very fluid and responsive user experience. So the idea with this session is that we're going to show you an example. You guys can maybe take this architecture module to your custom Lightning components as well. So here's our Send Offer Lightning component, right? So don't worry, we're going to take a look at that in action and also in the code. But I just want to mention that it's part of our recruitment application that our team created here for demos with partners and customers like you guys. And it basically covers the vanilla use case of candidates, interviews, and offers. It was built so the hiring manager can create and send a candidate offer letter to the candidate whenever it's the appropriate time to do so. And basically, it has 4 stages. So it has the detail stage, the edit stage, the review stage, and the result stage. So enough talking about it. Let's gonna take a look at that in action. So here we have our demo org, and this is the recruitment application that I mentioned. We are on a candidate record detail page, and I'm gonna open up our Send Offer Lightning component by clicking on this button here, which opens up our SPA Lightning component. So the idea here is that the hiring manager will enter some salary information, some bonus information. It would also choose an offer letter template, and then they will click on Next, which takes them to the second stage of our SPA, which we basically merge the information they enter on the first stage with an offer letter template. So we present the merged offer letter, and here on this stage, the hiring manager can make changes to the body of the offer letter. They would click on Next, which takes them to the third stage of our SPA, which is our review stage. And here they have a last chance to take a look at the offer letter body before they finally click on Confirm and Send, which takes them to the last stage of our SPA, which is when we finally send an offer letter by email to the candidate and create some offer object records in the Salesforce org, right? So I want to show you guys, let's go back to our deck, because I want to show you a little bit of the architecture, right? So our Send Offer Lightning component has a parent Lightning component, which is what you guys see here on the screen. It's called offerletterspa.cmp, right? As you can see, this parent holds the progress bar, and it holds that Send Offer label. So inside our parent, we basically make visible on each stage of our SPA these 4 different child Lightning components. So offer details, offer template, offer preview, and offer confirm. So here's an example. So when our parent first loads, we make the offer details child Lightning component visible, right? And when the user clicks on that next button, we then hide that first child Lightning component, and we make the second child Lightning component offer template.cmp visible at that particular moment. So how do we do that, right? Let me show you the code behind this. So here, let's access offerletterspa.cmp, which is our parent Lightning components markup. I want to scroll down the parent components markup because I want to show you how we did it. So basically, here at the bottom, we have these 4 different HTML div tags. And inside those div tags, we are basically referencing each of those 4 child Lightning components, right? So details, template, preview, and confirm. But as you guys may recall, when our parent first initializes, we only make the first one, offer details, visible, right? So how come the other ones are not showing up, right? They should be all stacked up. So I want to show you how we did that. We basically handled the Lightning system init event, right? That let us know that our parent Lightning component finished initialization. So after we handle that event and we call this doInit event handler, basically here at the top, what we did is we needed to make the 3 other child components invisible at that particular stage, right? So we instantiated a JavaScript variable. We used component.find to find the HTML divs of the child Lightning components that should be invisible at this particular stage. And then we use this approach a.u2.add class to dynamically add a CSS class, which is named toggle, to each of those other 3 child Lightning components that should be invisible at this particular stage. Okay, so that's how the offer details, only the offer details child component is visible whenever we first load our parent. But as you guys may recall, whenever the user clicks on that next button, that offers details, where the hiring manager enters the salary and the bonus disappears, and the second one, the second child component is made visible, right? So how did we do that? So first I want to show you the markup for that first child component, offer details. Okay, this is where they enter the salary, the bonus, and so on. And notice that the next button actually lives on the child component's markup, right? So the user clicks on this next button, and somehow the parent knows that it should hide this child Lightning component and make the next one in our flow visible, right? So our development team got together and we say, this is the perfect scenario for us to use Lightning component events, right? So Lightning component events is the best use case for that is whenever you have this parent and child components hierarchy, and you need to bubble up information from the child component level to the parent component level. So let me take a look at how we do that. So notice here on this first child component level that we're registering that we're going to fire this bubbling event of type offer SPA notifier event. So this is a custom event. I'm going to show you the markup. So this is a custom Lightning event that we created. You notice the type of event is component. Again, perfect for these bubble scenarios, right? That we need to communicate from child to parent level. And we have one defined attribute, which is basically the message that we want to send from the child components level to the parent component in our SPA, right? So let's go back to our first child, because I want to show you that after we handle the next click button action on the child's level, we basically we grab the event. So we instantiate that bubbling event that you guys just saw the markup in JavaScript. And then we use component.setParams to specifically set a message or an instruction that we want to pass from this child Lightning component to the parent Lightning component in our SPA. In this case, we want to say offer details next, meaning that the user is done with that offer details child Lightning component, right? So after we fire this bubbling event or this component event here on line 28 from the child components level, notice what happens on the parents level. So let's go back to our parents markup. Notice that it has a handler to that same bubbling event, right? Meaning that whenever any child component in our SPA fires this bubbling event, we're going to handle it on the parents level. And then we are going to execute this handle bubbling action in our parents JavaScript controller. So let's take a quick look at that. What we do here. So basically, whenever the parent handles that bubbling event, we know there's a message coming inside that event. We basically grab the parameters of the event, and then we have a JavaScript switch statement to basically inspect which kind of message this child component is sending to our parent. So in case the message is offer details next, we're going to use that same approach that we use on our doInit event handler, as you guys may recall, to add that same toggle CSS class now to the Lightning child component that should be invisible now that the user clicked on next. And now we use a.remove class to remove that toggle class that we had first added to the second child component in our flow to remove that toggle class, and that's how the second child component becomes visible. Okay? So to illustrate that, I want to show you guys this animation. So we have the first child component in green here, offer details, loaded inside our parent. It fires that bubbling event with that message, offer details next, and then our parent knows that it should hide the first child and unhide the second child, right? So this is basically the approach that we use throughout our SPA Lightning component, okay? So now let's go back to our demo org, because I want to show you guys something else. So remember that the hiring manager is entering information, right, on each of these child components. And we know that at the end, the ultimate goal of this SPA Lightning component is to send an offer letter to the candidate. And most likely, we will need all the information that the user is entering on all these different child Lightning components in our SPA, right? So how do we pass the information from one child Lightning component to another, right? Do we commit it to the Salesforce org? Would that make sense? Probably would not, right? Because we would be making a lot of calls to the server just to store an information that we can simply handle with the use of Lightning events as well. But this time, a different type of event. So a Lightning event of type application, which is ideal for when you need to communicate and pass information from Lightning components that do not live on that parent and child components hierarchy, right? All the child components in our SPA live on the same level. So we need to use a different kind of event for that. So let me show you here in our code. Let's go back to our first child Lightning component, offer details, because I want to show you that we also register that we're going to fire a different type of event that we created. Is a custom Lightning event as well, called candidate detail event. Let's take a look at the markup real quick. So here's our markup. Notice that the type of event is now application, right? Again, perfect for when you're not on the nested components hierarchy scenario. And then we define a lot of attributes here, right? The idea here is that we have a data structure that all the components in our SPA can use to aggregate information all on the client side and pass information to each other, right? So let's go back to our offer details. Whenever the user clicks on next, I want to take you guys straight to the helper action that happens after that next button click. So what we do here is we instantiate that app event of type candidate detail event, and then we use component.setParams to set the values for the attributes of our Lightning application event that we know so far, right? We don't need to set all those attributes, just the information that these child components know so far. And then we fire that application event. And what happens on the second child Lightning component, let's take a look at that. So offer template has a handler to that same type of event, candidate detail event, which we're using to share data. And whenever it handles it, it basically, in our code here on this second child, we store that information locally on attributes on this child Lightning component, and so on. So we use this approach to pass information to all the child Lightning components in our SPA. Let's go back to our deck, because I want to show you a visual representation of that. So here's our first child Lightning component, instantiating that application event, putting this information in brown here that you know so far. It fires that event, the second Lightning component receives that same event, aggregates more information, and so on, fires that same event again. So the next child component in our SPA can handle and receive the aggregated information. This is all on the client side. And then when we get to the last child Lightning component in our flow, that's when we make a call to the Salesforce org to send the offer letter to the candidate and to create the records in the background, and we receive information back from the org to the child Lightning components to show the results. So again, you guys can see that we use Lightning events of two types here to basically control the navigation inside our SPA and also to share information with each child Lightning component in our flow. So when you create an SPA Lightning component like we did here, you have three different approaches that you can use to basically create the child components inside the parent, right? So you guys saw the CSS approach that we use, which basically we hide and show the different child Lightning components at particular times. We also have, we would be able to do that by using the aura if tag. I'm going to show you an example. And we'll be able to dynamically create the child Lightning components on the parent components JavaScript code as well. So let's review the CSS approach that we use with our SPA here, right? So it's best to use whenever you need to show and hide the same child Lightning components frequently, right? We know that the user will have to load at least once all the child Lightning components in our SPA. We don't have a lot of child Lightning components in our SPA. And we know that those child Lightning components are not doing expensive stuff like going to the server to fetch data and so on, like it's our example here. So by doing that, by using this approach, we're able to load all those child components and its dependencies to our parent components HTML DOM tree once, right, whenever the parent first initializes, and then we just play around with visibility. So if you have a small SPA like that, CSS may be a good approach because your SPA will be really quick, okay? Now, the RIF approach is actually our suggested approach whenever you're creating child components on our parent components markup. The reason why it's a suggested approach is because you saw that CSS falls into a very specific category whenever your child Lightning components are very basic. But RIF approach, you notice that it has this isTrue attribute on the top, which basically you are able to defer the creation and the load of the child components inside your parent based on that Boolean attribute, the vDetails test, for example. You are able to create some logic to control the creation of the child Lightning components by using RIF. So it's best to use when the users maybe don't need to ever load one of the child components in your SPA, right? Maybe it's a help little child Lightning component inside your SPA that maybe the user doesn't need help, right? So by using RIF, you're able to defer that child Lightning component creation. And the main benefits is that you simply visibility logic from parents markup. So you are able to control everything on the parents markup with some logic, right? The last approach is the dynamic creation approach. So this is best to use whenever you guys as developers, you guys will love this approach because you can use JavaScript code to basically create the child components using this a.create component approach, all for your parents' components JavaScript code. And you can do a lot of cool stuff with code. You can create an if statement. You can inspect the records you're getting back from the server, for example, to create different child components with different attributes, all at real time, right, at runtime. So you have code level control of the child components creation and destruction, basically. So this brings us to our session resources. I actually, about 3 hours ago, I pasted this deck to our session record on dreamforce.com. You should be able to access from the app as well. So it has the PDF, and we have put here some links to some Trailhead modules, some documentation page, and also to our GitHub code repository that has that send offer Lightning component code. So feel free to fork that GitHub code repo, make it your own, let us know how it goes. I'm not sure if we have much time for Q&A, but I'm happy to take any questions here on the side. Thank you, guys.